It's my privilege today to welcome a visiting speaker and his wife, and John and Trish Waller. It's Sunday, so it's the Reverend John and Queen Trish. Is that okay? And I've known John and Trish for maybe 25 years or more, and just an amazing story they've got. And let's welcome Pastor John and Trish Waller. Now, Trish is using my chair because she says I can't climb on the big ones. And me as well. That's why I have the smaller chair. I can't get on the big ones. I'm the tallest man in the church, and I can't get on the big ones, you know. I think it's because my body's full of finesse. And it's great to see John and Trish with us. And tell us a little bit about yourselves, Trish, where you've been, what you've done in terms of ministry.
In terms of ministry, well, became a Christian in 1984. In 1987, we went off to Bible College, and from there, 2 years later, we pioneered a church in Slough. That's West London. That's where we met Phil and Helen. Somebody
from Slough?
Yeah, brilliant place.
That's what they do there, isn't
it? We were in Slough 3 years.
Yeah.
And then John was asked to go to Ghana, West Africa. We were there for 11 years. John was the principal of the Bible College there, where they trained their young men and sent them out into ministry. I worked in the International Missions Office, loved every minute of it. We came back from there 2003 and went to Dublin in the Republic of Ireland. Yeah, sorry, Sammy. Again, we loved every minute, absolutely brilliant. The Lord has been so good to us. And then 10 years ago, we went to Barking, East London, Slough. Back in East London until last year, October, when we retired. And now we're up in Yorkshire.
Yeah, very good.
That's okay?
Yeah. So, John, you went to work with the Church of Pentecost in Ghana, which is a sort of sister fellowship to Elam.
That's right.
And that's seeing massive growth. Tell us a little bit about that growth, John.
Yeah, the Church of Pentecost multiplied by dividing. And how that works out is once a church gets to about 100, they split it into two and ask 50 people to go off and start another church. And their evangelism is an ongoing thing. And for 5 years, I was the principal of the Bible College. And nearly all of the students that came through the Bible College in those 5 years were sent to what were termed the internal mission areas, the parts of Ghana that were quite remote and didn't have a strong Christian witness. And so they were sent there, and during the 5 years of my principal's role, I was invited to go there and help them, elders training and church planting and that sort of stuff. And the church recognized that I seemed to have some sort of gift for that. So after 5 years, one of their men had been trained at Elim Bible College and went back and took over the role of principal, and they appointed me as director of internal missions. And we headed up the church planting and the evangelism side of things for 6 years. And I was saying to the men yesterday, in our final year that we were there, that year we opened 500 new churches in Ghana. 10 a week we were opening. And in the 11 years we were there, the church went from about just over 100,000 people within the nation to just short of 500,000 people in the nation. And as of last year, because the church planting still continues, the membership of Church of Pentecost in Ghana is now 2.2 million people, 8% of the population. The president invites the chairman to Parliament to speak and to pray over Parliament. And they have ministers, MPs, people, so many, people of influence within the church now. Just an amazing, amazing church that was started in 1935 by a man from Northern Ireland, James McEwen. From Ballymena, that's it, Sammy. You kicked him out and Ghana accepted him. Yeah, so
great.
Amazing time, yeah.
So everywhere John and Trish have gone, John was a trucker, he was a Yorkie barman, and he was everything you expect a trucker to be. And then God met with him.
Yeah.
In a dramatic way. God met with Trish first.
Yeah.
And he was very wary of this new Christian wife he'd got. And he was telling the men yesterday, I won't go into the story, but it's quite funny. And everywhere they've gone, they've seen a lot of growth and a lot of blessing. Yeah. In Slough, they established a church that wasn't there. Pioneering, planting new churches is really tough.
Yeah.
And, it's much easier to build a bigger church than it is a church with no people. And John did that, and then he went to Africa and had an amazing ministry there. Came to Dublin, and the church grew in, what was the place called?
Ballyfermot.
Ballyfermot, and that's where the anointing was, not where Pastor Sammy's from, and then came to Barking and saw great growth.
Yeah.
At Barking. And it sounds great, doesn't it, the ministry, but I wouldn't want you to think for a minute, and this is why I wanted to interview Trish and John, that the ministry is glamorous, because there are a lot of setbacks as well. And I want to talk about two in particular. John and Trish have two sons, and in, I don't know the year, Trish, but Darryl, 1995, their eldest son. Let's talk about that for a moment, if you don't mind. Yeah. Tell us what happened, Trish.
Long story. Basically, 1 August bank holiday, 1994, we got a telephone. We were in Ghana. Our sons were both back in Slough. And Darryl had taken a dog for a walk, and his friend had found him asleep on a school field. Fast asleep, couldn't wake him up. And when they realised that he needed medical help, they took him off to hospital, and it was quite apparent that there was something radically wrong. And what it was a tumour in the centre of his brain. Sort of how they described it to us was 3 inches down and 3 inches in an area they call the hypothalamus region. And that affects lots of different parts of your body. You're sleeping, you're eating, various different parts of your body. And he'd just fallen asleep, and it would be not unusual for Darryl to sleep for maybe 22, 23 hours a day. He didn't always recognise people, didn't know where he was.
How old was he, Trish?
He was 25 then. And he was a really sparky lad, very bright. He was a manager in H. Samuels, the jewellers, really popular, very good worker, and a really nice lad. And so to see him kind of wiped out to nothing, where he didn't know anything, couldn't remember anything, it was devastating. And they couldn't operate or anything because of where the swelling was. So they just had to treat him with radiotherapy and steroids. And the thing did shrink a little bit, but never completely, and it just grew again. And basically it was that caused his death, because it affected his breathing. And once it affects your breathing, you know, there's nothing anybody can do. So
and totally out of the blue.
Out of the blue, yeah, nothing. He did get headaches, and I got migraines, so he just thought it was migraine, but it wasn't. So, yeah.
How did you cope with the death of your son?
Not very well at first, I've got to say. We cried a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I can describe it was I felt a physical pain in my heart. It was like somebody had ripped my heart out. And I could feel it. It hurt. And I wasn't very happy with God. It was sort of, you know, why did it have to be me? I've only got 2 kids. you know, all these Africans with 10 and 12, why not one of theirs? They would still have had loads left. And it took a while, a few weeks actually, and I tried to pray and I tried to read, because that's what I've always done, and that's what I knew I should do, and I knew God was there, and I knew that God loved me. I knew all of that, but it just wasn't having much effect on me. And one day, when I was going through this grumpy, why me phase, I'd read a book a number of years before about a lady who had worked in the Congo, gone through a really traumatic experience, and she'd kind of asked God the same question, why me? And God had said, why not? And it was one of those moments where I was saying, why me? And the Holy Spirit just said, why not you? And I thought, yeah, why not me? If I'm a Christian and I can't cope with things that other people have to cope with. And it turned everything around for me a little bit. Because instead of thinking, why me? I was thinking, why not me? And then I started thinking, well, after all, I did have 25 brilliant years. Like I say, he was a brilliant lad. Absolutely loved him to bits. Same kind of sense of humour as me. We got on really well together. We liked the same kind of things. He was a great kid. And I thought, I had 25 years. Some people can't have any children. Some people's children die, you know, they're stillborn or something. So I've had 25 years. I should be thanking God for 25 years. And when I got that into my head, it turned everything around. But that wasn't an easy place to get to. I've got to say it wasn't.
He was a great Christian boy as well.
He was, yeah. He did love the Lord. He backslid a little bit. We had a few, you know, hiccups. But yes, yeah. I know where he is now.
So there's a reunion day. And
there is,
and
yes.
when I lost my lad, you come to realise for years you've always believed that God is sovereign and he can do what he wants. Yeah. And he can take who he wants. He's a giver of life and he's a taker of life. And we believe that until it comes to our door and we say, Lord, what are you doing? Yeah. You know, and we came to the conclusion that God is sovereign. Amen. And every day I prayed for my boy, as you would pray for your boy, for protection and what have you. But you can't pray against the sovereignty of God. No. When God decides he wants to take something away, it's for his glory. And it's hard to come to terms with. So it's not always easy. But John, I'd like to talk to you about another area of your life.
Right.
I'd not long been a regional superintendent. I looked after 130 churches in the metropolitan region, 200 ministers, of which John was one. And I hadn't been he was planting this church in Slough, and I was thrilled to bits, and I was so excited about this, and John was doing a great job. And I remember saying to John, whatever you do, don't you leave this place. He said, don't you worry about that. Don't you leave this place, I say. Don't leave this place, right? So then he says, I'm going on holiday.
You were going on
I was going on holiday, sorry. I was going on holiday. And, you know, what happened, John?
Yeah, well, while Phil was on holiday, I went up to Elim headquarters to see if I could get some money out of them to buy a property in Slough. The church was going really well. And while I was there, the missions director called me in and said, Lionel and Ruth Curry are leaving Ghana, and we'd like you and Trish to consider going to Ghana to replace them. The chairman of the Church of Pentecost had asked me the same question about 3 months previously, and I'd said no to them. I said, look, I can't go and ask. I don't want to ask. If you want us, you ask. And they hadn't, so I thought, put that to bed. But when we prayed it through and thought about it and talked to the lads and talked to my father, who was living with us at that time, they all felt if that's what God's want is, that's what we should do. So by the time Phil came back from holidays and I met them at the airport and he said, any news? I said, yeah, I'm leaving.
Jolly waster. And what a right move that proved to be. But then we went on a bit of another journey.
Yes.
Tell us about that, John.
We went to Ghana in August of '92 for a fact-finding tour. I did 2 weeks there, and during that time I was attacked by African soldiers, which is what James McEwen used to call mosquitoes, African soldiers. They killed more white people in Ghana than any of the other, native soldiers, the African soldiers. So I got malaria, treated it, came back to UK and got ready to fly out in September. feeling fine, made all the arrangements, sent all of our stuff, woke up the morning of going to Ghana, and I just felt awful. And I said to Trish, I feel terrible. And Trish, being a Yorkshireman, said, well, you'll just have to go, won't you? We've got the tickets. Plane's waiting on the runway for you. We'll go. So we went to Ghana. I got off the plane, went straight to hospital where they treated me for malaria again. It had flared up. About a week later, I came out and was just slowly getting better. But I knew I wasn't right. And we'd been there another 2 weeks, and I just started to go downhill quickly. The weight started dropping off me. I contracted jaundice. My skin was yellow. My eyes were yellow. And a doctor there said I had obstructive jaundice and maybe I should come back to England to sort it out. He said it's usually keyhole surgery. So I said to Trish, look, we've only been here a few weeks. I'll go back and have this keyhole surgery and then I'll come back. You wait here. So she waited in Ghana and I flew back to London. I was met at the airport by the pastor who took over from me in Slough, and he took me straight to Windsor, Princess Margaret Hospital, where a consultant was waiting to look at me, and they did blood tests on that Saturday morning, and he said, I need you back on Monday to see one of my colleagues. Just go home and enjoy the weekend, get some nice food, whatever you want to eat. So I remember going into the supermarket with Roland, and we bought ice cream and all the really nice stuff that we hadn't been able to get in Ghana. And we just got settled in the house, and the doctor phoned and said, you can't have anything with sugar in. Your blood sugar is like 26, and the average is 5 point something. He says, you've got diabetes. So I had to lay there and watch Roland very courageously eat all of my ice cream for me. I'm doing you a favour here, he said.
Do you think that would have happened if you'd invited me instead of Roland? I think you might have been okay if you invited me to eat the ice cream and cake and things.
Yeah, you'd probably have eaten it quicker, so I wouldn't have had such a long period of, looking at him and hating him. But yeah, so then I went to the hospital. The guy said, we're going to take you in for a CT scan. We're going to see if we can do a biopsy. It's your pancreas that's all messed up. It's clogged up down there. They took the CT scan. I went down to his surgery the next day, and he said, look, that wasn't conclusive, the biopsy. We didn't get what we wanted. He said, but I have to operate and do a triple bypass of your pancreas to get everything working again in that area. The blood tests had come through, so I had jaundice, diabetes, hepatitis, and then the aftermath of the malaria. I lost 4 stone in a month, so I was really skinny and really yellow. And he said, we're going to do this operation tomorrow, or in 2 days' time. Where's your wife? I said, well, she's in Africa. Well, she really needs to get back. Because he said, he said, if I was an expert, and I am, I believe that you've got pancreatic cancer. And if that's the case, you've probably got 3 months to live. But he said, looking at your condition, I would put it more like 3 weeks, because I was just so weak physically. So trying to get Trish back, her passport had gone missing in Ghana, but she managed to get back Friday morning and met me in the corridor as they're wheeling me down to the theatre for the surgery. And the doctor told me, he said, when I do the operation, I'm going to take a biopsy from your pancreas, I'm going to get it tested, and I will be back on Tuesday morning to let you know the results. I can't come on Monday because I'm going to France for a wine tasting weekend, and I won't be back till Monday evening. So I said, okay.
And it was pretty desperate. And at that time, in between this time, I went to see Trish.
Yeah.
And Trish greeted me with a black dress. And I said, it's very nice, but it won't fit me. And she said, no, do you think this will be okay for the funeral? That's how far John had gone.
Yeah.
That they only expected him to live a few hours.
Yeah.
And it was, in human terms, fait accompli.
5 o'clock on Tuesday morning, I tried to get out of bed. Every hole in my body had something sticking out of it or something sticking in it, and I was insulin pumps and morphine pumps, and I tried to get out of bed and I couldn't, and I just sat at the edge of the bed and started crying. And the nurse, who was from Kenya, came in and said, "John, what's wrong?" And I said, "I don't know." And so she sat down with me, put her arm around me, she started crying. And then the senior sister heard this commotion in my room, came down, "What's wrong?" Both of us there in tears, couldn't tell her, so she started crying. So at 6 o'clock, they phoned Trish and said, "Trish, you need to come down. We don't know what's wrong with John." And so she came down quickly, and so we're all there crying together. And they got me back into bed. All I can say was that I just felt it was the end. I felt so weak, emotionally, physically. I still felt strong spiritually. I was still trusting God, because Roland said, he said, when we came out of the doctors, he said, "You remember turning to me and saying to me, 'Don't worry, Roland, God's in control.'" And I said, "I don't remember saying that." He said, "Yeah, you did."
Roland was another minister.
Yeah. And he said, "Because I thought when you said that, well, I'm not so sure if he is, really." But, so they got me back in bed, and we waited for 9 o'clock for Mr. Blacksland. And he didn't come at 9 o'clock. He rocks up at 9:30, apologizes for being late, but then his next words are, "Someone up there must like you." Everyone knew in the place I was a Christian, because when I was in intensive care and on morphine, I was witnessing to everybody, high as a kite. And that's the only good thing about having a serious operation, is the morphine. It's wonderful stuff. But he said, "Someone up there must like you." He said, "The reason I'm late," he says, "when I got home last night, they gave me the results of your tests, and there is no cancer." And he said, "I phoned them, I said, but I've seen this man's pancreas. So you better run all the tests again, because I don't want to tell him there's no cancer, and then you come to me and say, 'Oh, sorry, we made a mistake.' Yeah, it is cancer." He said, "So the tests have been run twice. There's no cancer." I said, "Will we be able to go back to Ghana?" He said, "Yes, no problem at all." With that, Brian Edwards, our missions director, walks in the room, and I'm thinking, what are you doing here? Well, it was there for Trish, because they were expecting, bad news, and so he was there to give us some pastoral. I didn't work that out for a few days afterwards, but what are you doing here on a Monday morning? And 10 weeks recovery period, but in January 93, we were back in Ghana and stayed there until December 2003. So that's why we always say 11 years, because we were posted there in 92, even though we didn't spend much time there in 92.
An amazing testimony. And it is the issue, you see, folks. God is a sovereign God.
Amen.
You can't pray against his sovereignty.
Yeah.
And some people do die. But God is also a healing God.
Amen.
And just because some people die, Darryl died, which we don't like.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that God heals.
No.
And there's a time for us to go, and there's a time for God to heal. Yeah. So what I'm saying to you is this: if you've lost someone you love, you come to terms with the fact that God knows best for that person. But if you're sick, or you know somebody who's sick, don't stop believing that they'll be healed until the very last breath. And even after that, believe they'll come back to life again. We have a sovereign God, and we have a healing God. I wanted to interview John and Trish, because I knew that would speak to you and it would bless you. Let's thank them right now.
Bless you.
So we're going to sing something very quickly, and then I'm going to ask John if he'll come and share the word of God with